Joining me right now is former Senator Kelly Loeffler. She is now heading up an organization called Greater Georgia, and we welcome you back to the program, Kelly. How are you?
Great. Good morning, Martha. Great to be with you.
Thank you. First of all, tell folks about Greater Georgia and what it is.
Well, Greater Georgia is really a voting mobilization organization that I founded based on what I saw firsthand in being a candidate in the largest Senate campaign really in the history of our state and probably our country. And I saw the opportunity really to grow the conservative movement and to leave the tent up year round and not take it down after an election. And also to make sure that we're reaching out to diverse communities, making sure that their voices are heard. And then as we register more conservatives, we know that there's 1 million conservative-leaning unregistered Georgians in our state right now. We know that we're being out-registered right now by Democrats by a significant margin, by about 7,500 voters a month. So we need to do that work. But then we need to keep that dialogue going to make sure that they understand that the decisions being made in Washington are affecting their everyday lives. And then help them get to the polls when an election year does come and make sure that there's integrity in elections. And so those are the three big issues. It's register, it's engage, and mobilize around elections that we're going to help with. It's really an unprecedented effort, and no one's really stood up to the Abrams organization, and that's what we're doing.
Well, and that's one of the things that I've been saying is that, for 5 years we watched as Stacey Abrams created this sort of parallel universe to the Democratic Party. And we needed to do something like that on the Republican side. And I'm glad that you're doing that. And I know you're getting out to the traditional meetings and that kind of thing. But tell me, just before we get to the topic for today, tell me a little bit about some of these new groups you've been meeting with, because I see the pictures, I see the posts, but that you're getting together with people that may not think they're part of the Republican Party.
That's right, Martha. And that was one of the exciting parts of my campaign. It's what I loved when someone would come up to me and say, I've never been involved in politics before. I didn't know that I could be. It was so accessible. And so the meetings we've been having, it ranges from young Republicans to the Hispanic community, the Black community, more women, and making sure that everyone knows that we want to hear their voice in our movement, that their voice matters. And I'm finding incredible folks that are saying, this is the first time I've ever been to an event like this, but I'm coming back. I held a training in DeKalb County the other night. We had 75 attendees. About 20% had never been to an event before, a political event, but they had to get involved after what they saw. And so there's tremendous potential, and I'm holding an event tonight in Cobb County. So we're continuing to bring more people into the party every single day.
Well, and I'm so glad of the work that you're doing. And I know it was very disappointing for everyone who supported you of your loss in January. But, since then, one woman has been elected in Louisiana to a House seat special election, and another woman has advanced in Texas in a House seat special election. So we're making a lot of progress, and I'm so glad you're working on this Greater Georgia, and I'm touting Greater Georgia everywhere I go because I think that this is really going to be the answer to what we need to be able to have the kind of structure in place to be able to get our voters out. So thank you for that. Last week, you sent out a press release and a letter to Georgia Attorney General Chris Carr about an investigation into Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger. Tell us about that.
That's right, Martha. So I sent a letter to Attorney General Carr asking him to investigate Secretary of State Raffensperger for potential conflicts of interest really relating to his political self-interest. And now let me be very clear. This is not about the outcome of our election in 2020 or 2021. It's really to restore confidence and hold our election officials accountable, our top election official accountable, because what we've seen is really an unprecedented loss of confidence in our elections in this state. That's not fair to Georgians of any party. This isn't even a partisan issue. We've seen sweeping really unprecedented changes made to our elections in 2020, much of it related to the pandemic. But there was also a consent decree signed unbeknownst to the General Assembly. It came out last month that Secretary Raffensperger took $5.5 million from big tech on top of the money that went to the counties. He conducted a mass mailing of unsolicited absentee ballot request forms. And the list goes on and on, culminating in orchestrating the recording and release of a call with President Trump just 2 days before David Perdue and my Senate runoff, which really demoralized voters and served to suppress voters to the tune of about 339,000 Republicans who voted in November who did not come back out in January. So I want to know what happened, and if nothing happened, then we should reassure voters that we've looked at it and everything was done to secure the vote and not to frustrate voters that might have been supporters of President Trump.
Well, and both in Georgia and in Pennsylvania, you had these situations where there were adjustments, changes, whatever terminology they want to use, that were done in the name of COVID-19, but actually didn't go through the proper channels legislatively because of that. And, those are the things that I was most looking at. I mean, there were a lot of accusations that were made throughout this whole process. But for me, I'm kind of more of a process person. I'm a little legalistic. I'll admit to that what the law says is legislatures have to change these rules, not just the Secretary of State or the governor. And the governor did have some power related to his emergency powers related to COVID. But I think you're right in asking Chris Carr to look at this, because I think Secretary Raffensperger went beyond what the scope of that was.
Well, that's right. And minimally, if you're going to put sweeping changes in place, make sure that they're uniformly and consistently applied, and that those changes are transparent. And a lot of these things weren't. They weren't well communicated. They weren't communicated at all in terms of the consent decree, which did change the signature review process, made it harder to reject an absentee ballot. And I think Georgians just want to know it's fair. They want to know that their vote is going to be treated and scrutinized in the same way as the next person's vote. And that's why I applauded the Election Integrity Act, SB 202, that was passed and signed into law by Governor Kemp, and that is a tremendous starting point for us to approach the upcoming elections next year.
Now, if you go to greatergeorgia.com, you can find this press release, which has the things Kelly and I are talking about now, as well as a copy of the letter. So if you want to look at it, because there's a lot of points on this letter, very well documented. Have you gotten a response from the Attorney General's office yet?
Well, not directly, but I did see that he had commented that he would have to recuse himself and deferred to his client to make a comment, which he did. Secretary Raffensperger made in the form of a political attack, which really just validated my point of the letter, which is, as the top elections official, there's no place for playing politics in this. Georgians deserve to know that there's a level playing field when candidates come in, when voters come in, and that election integrity is going to be paramount to every discussion. And so I'll continue to be looking at how we can advance this, just to make sure that it doesn't take the form of suppressing the vote in our next election.
And, and look, the Secretary Raffensperger made a personal attack against you, and I can say it. You're too nice to say it. He made a personal attack against you, and really, it was not the right way to go on this. He should be willing to be questioned on what he did and how he did it. That's what this process is all about. I am one of these people that is very pragmatic about where we are right now, that we need to deal with these things that happened in 2020, but we also need to be focused on where we are and what we have to do to win in 2022. So I'm a little more pragmatic than some folks are about it, but I still think the truth has to be found.
Exactly. And the whole purpose of this exercise is, let's learn from the past. We're not going to change anything, but maybe we can make sure that there's some areas that we can strengthen: confidence, uniformity, transparency, accountability. No one's above the law. No one's above the law, even our top elections official. And that's really why I started Greater Georgia, is to make sure that we're addressing all of this well in advance of an election, that we're getting our folks registered, that we're keeping them engaged, that we're bringing new folks into the party, and that we have election integrity. So I'd love your listeners to visit us at greatergeorgia.com. You can see our newsletters there. You can sign up to volunteer. Come to one of our volunteer training sessions. And get engaged, because your voice matters, and that's what this is all about.
Kelly Loeffler, Chairwoman of Greater Georgia, also former Senator of Georgia. And if you haven't looked at Senator Loeffler's record as she was our United States Senator, she got a huge amount accomplished in a short amount of time, and we look forward to working with her and for her again. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Thanks, Martha. Thanks for all you do.